This upload's taken a while. Had a good connection, now it seems I've got a junky one. Anyway, I am going to make a video on a few things about the Aboriginals. You know, you got to get everything you know about white people and the white way of living. You know, the left-wing paradigm, the right-wing paradigm, the, poverty, wealth, materialism, consumerism, individual ownership, individualism in general, motivation, the idea of going to work to advance yourself, the concept of being a grid slave, the very concept of money itself. You got to get all that and just fling it to the wind, because none of it fits in the Aboriginal culture. Everything you know as a white person and your white way of thinking, don't think white if you want to understand these people. It's so far such a different ball game with them, you might as well be talking about aliens if you're comparing it to white culture. I mean, that's how far strange it is. Some of the things they, think, the way they do things, their motivations and all that. Quite simply, there's a saying that they've got that white man invented work and he can keep it. Now, you got to understand something about Aboriginals. They are the most unmaterialistic, unconsumeristic people that you could ever get your head around. They don't believe in working because, quite simply, they live for thousands of years without doing work. Yes, they have a low standard of living, but they don't mind having a low standard of living, because they take what they need, they do what they need to do, and any more than taking what you need is just greediness. And, there is no realistic reason to do any more in their mind than they need to do. Because quite simply, they are so unmaterialistic that they don't want to advance themselves to a nicer house, to a this, to a that, to a better car, blah, blah, blah. They just want to live their life and have, the basics. And when I say basics, you would look at some of their ways of living and some of the things they get up to, and unless you're South African, you probably would have never seen anything like it. I'm not joking when I say some of these areas you go into, and it is almost as bad as, or in some cases worse than, slums in South Africa. And you automatically may jump to the conclusion that that's poverty. Well, they like to live in humpies. They often sleep in the back of cars. This is not poverty. This is the way they've always been, because they're so entirely unmaterialistic and they don't have this factor of greed, this factor of wealth. The concept of money never existed amongst them. They didn't have seashells they exchanged or anything. They just didn't have anything in the way of money. They believe in sort of collective ownership. What's mine is yours, and when you've got cigarettes, I'll get some off you, and when I've got them later, you can get some off me. That's the way they run. It's just, there is a collective sort of a thought, because they're tribal. They, work as a tribe. The elders sort of run the tribe and all that, but, there's sort of the elders say this is the way it's going to be, and that's pretty much the way it is, and they all think, and work as in a group sort of a way, because, that's the way tribal life is. There are young couples who have decided that they are in love, and the elders and the tribe have decided, no, that's not on. And they've run away to get married and to be together, and they'll have a kid and that together, and then they spend the rest of their life looking over their shoulder, worried that one of the people from their old tribe is going to come and kill them. And plenty of times they have, especially in the past and that. If they say you're not getting married, that means you're not getting married. And many of them ran away to try and be together and then got killed. They send someone out to track them down and kill them. There's a lot of things that is very hard to get your head around when you see them living so low. It's automatically the white thing kicks in. That's poverty. Therefore, we've got to throw money at them. But the fact of the matter is, they want to live basically, simply, with no materialism, no ownership, and this all may sound like, very communist style sort of stuff, but this is the thing. This is the way they run. We automatically go and put our white think onto them and then try and rearrange them, and that's most of what's caused the problems. Now, another one is alcohol. That has caused so much problems it's not funny. But initially, the story was a little bit different. How it all works with unions, if you know anything about unions, you may have seen this idea that, and I've seen it even enforced on a video store that had workers who, the bloke could barely afford to pay them, and he said they're hopeless as workers, a lot of these uni students, because they'd be there waffling away about global warming or this or that or something else, and, the line of customers would be backing up. Anyway, he said, look, how about you just work for a certain amount of free video rentals? Well, the unions were all over him like a rash, because apparently that's not legal. Well, once upon a time, Aboriginals used to work for cattle ranches, and they'd, do fencing and round up the cattle and all that sort of stuff. And they were working on a barter sort of a basis. They would get flour and meat and stuff like that. It was all good between both sides. And then the unionists come along sometime in the early 70s or late 60s or something. Anyway, they made a big huff about it all and said you got to pay them money. Well, the only trouble with that is the only thing there are to buy in these places is alcohol. And you go, oh, there must be cars, there must be this, there must be that. Oh, if it was able to be sold, they'd bring it. You got no idea the remoteness of this joint. You might as well be on Mars. A lot of these way out areas, you might as well be on Mars. There is no scrap metal service. All the old burnt out vehicles just get left on the side of the road and in different areas and just go rusty. The only thing you can seem to ever buy is alcohol. And maybe a bit of severely overpriced fuel. But that's all there is to buy. So they get all this money and then they go, well, what are we going to do with it all? Well, the only thing that was in massive abundance, and I mean, it seems there is nothing else in these areas, but there is absolutely semi-trailers full of alcohol. And so they'd buy that. And that turned them alcoholic, and from there they fell into the welfare trap, and it's gone downhill from ever since. White interference and all this has caused a lot of societal fractures, which lead to a lot of fighting and sexual crimes and things like that. Now, basically, there's another thing they do, which is go walkabout. And what basically happens is they believe it to be something seasonal. And basically, they'll be there working away, doing their usual stuff and all that, and they'll just sort of say, what do you want next, boss? This boss, that boss, boom, 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 and everything's going normal. And then they'll just say to you, they'll be working away and that, and then, they'll come up to you 20 minutes later, 15 minutes later, and just say, oh, I go walkabout, boss. And, oh, yeah, all right, yeah, whatever. And they'll just disappear. And they will disappear off the face of the earth for about 3 weeks. And then they just turn up there one day at work again and say, oh, you know, what do we got to do now, boss? And you're like, what the hell's going on here? They reckon it's something in this sort of as the seasons change, they used to be nomadic and they'd migrate into different areas, and they reckon it's something like that that's almost become inbuilt, almost like instinct, and they can't sort of get away from it. And they will walk, and I mean they will literally walk all day, and then they'll literally walk all night. I mean, they'll walk for like 18 hours straight. And then, you know, one of the other phrases for it, walkabout's the main name, but amongst themselves it's sometimes called pink eye, because they get bloodshot eyes from walking all night and doing an all-nighter. So that's another funny thing that happens with them. And, you know, there's a lot of things and a lot of ways that they get up to that you just can't sort of put in white terms, you know. But yeah, you know, they are the absolute most unmaterialistic people who don't understand anything in regards to individual ownership. I mean, they do, but they, you know, it's not their way. And yeah, you know, everything you know about white culture, throw it out the window. Everything you know about city living, throw it out the window when it comes to the outback. Because, you know, things are very different. You know, it's unfortunate that they've had such a demise and there's so many sexually transmitted diseases, and the army is on the ground. A lot of them is actually nurses and stuff like this. But, you know, there's a lot of fighting, and there's a bloke I work with at one point there. He's a truck driver, and he was up working in the mines at one point, and he saw literally one whole tribe fight another whole tribe in the main street of a town, and he said there was everything from 5-year-old boys to grandpas and grandmas getting into this fight, and there's 100 on each side or 80 on each side, and they went for it. And he said you would not have believed it until you actually seen it happen, that there's people in their late 70s getting into punch-ons along with the 5-year-olds, and he said it was an absolute free-for-all. And he said that he was sitting there out the front of the pub with the cop who had a beer in his hand. The cop was drinking, and then he said to the cop, "Are you going to do anything about this?" And he said, "No, mate. What can one cop do?" And he said, "What happens is I just wait till it's all over and see if anyone needs any, you know, medical attention, see if the people laying on the ground are all right and what's going on, and help them to their feet and all that. And if anybody wants to press charges or whatever, well, we suppose we've got to do some paperwork." But he said, "I just go and, you know, pick up whoever's on the ground later on, and that's all I can do." Because they realise out in these areas that there is no backup coming, you know, and they've got to be there for years to come. So they've got to be able to get on with these people, not start picking enemies, because when you're one cop amongst a whole bunch of people who can sometimes go a bit crazy, and it's not just the black people go crazy out in the desert, it's definitely the white people too. You know, you don't want to go pushing people around the wrong way. But, you know, it's a strange way. Comparing it to white people is like comparing it to Martians, just about. But yeah, that's their way of doing things, and that's just the way it is.